Welcome to the At Heart Branding Podcast presented by At Heart Branding Co., where we believe cluttered content confuses your customers, puzzling marketing plans are one of your biggest problems, and clear, authentic marketing is the best way to grow your business. I am your host, Brighton Udy, and I'm so happy that you've joined us. Welcome to another episode of the At Heart Branding Podcast. I'm really excited about this episode because I'm really excited about the guest, and I'm also excited about the topic. You know, I think personality within a brand is something that is often overlooked and something that really goes unnoticed. If you think of any of the top brands in the world, think of Apple or Coca-Cola, Pepsi even, the difference in these brands is that they have a definitive personality, really. Think of like Doritos, for example. Compare their ads to a Coca-Cola ad to an Apple ad. There's a certain personality that comes along with that brand, and there's a certain voice that they use. There's certain words that they use in order to evoke certain emotions from you as their audience. So we're going to dig into that today. We're going to dig into the personality of a brand. We're going to dig into the voice of the brand, and we're going to see the differences of having a voice filter, a personality structure for your brand, and how it can make your brand that much more effective when it's implemented into your marketing. Now, the guest that I have today, I'm really, really excited about, and she's not only going to be here for one episode talking about personality, but she's going to be here for 2 episodes. So stick around for the next episode, episode 3 of the At Heart Branding Podcast, when we talk about story as well. So our guest today, very special guest for 2 episodes, is Shawna Robinson. Shawna is a storyteller, and she mentions that it first started with her childhood diaries. And then she started in a career as an advertising copywriter and now is an entrepreneur. She spent 15 years working with one of North America's largest agriculturally focused communications agencies, holding creative lead positions both in Canada and the US. She's created many award-winning campaigns for clients spanning from animal health to fertilizer to ag retail, and in mediums from print to TV and radio. During her freelance career, she helped small to medium-sized businesses define and create a brand that they could execute with everyday business tools. She's also applied those same skills in her volunteer pursuits in marketing positions on a variety of Calgary Stampede committees, and now with Create, Calgary's new children's festival. And last year, she launched her own business, Everyday Icing, a subscription-based online library of read-aloud stories for kids, where she writes a story a week thoughtfully created to allow kids and adults to connect and imagine unlimited possibilities. She mentioned to me after the interview that she calls it Everyday Icing because sharing a story should be the sweetest part of your day. And that is why she's called it Everyday Icing. I'm really excited for you to hear this interview with Shawna Robinson and also the next one. So stick around for that one as well. Here is my interview with the one and only Shawna Robinson. Shawna Robinson, thank you so much for being on the At Heart Branding Podcast. And not only for one episode, we're going to do 2 episodes.
Great.
We're just going to bring that a little closer.
There you
go.
In.
There
Yeah.
you go. Now we can hear you. Because we're going to talk about voice, which is kind of the second part of our process, and the personality of a brand, but also the story. So that's going to be kind of the next episode, because you are very skilled and knowledgeable in both, which I thought you would be kind of the perfect guest to be in both of those episodes. So, I mean, I know a decent amount about your story, but why don't you enlighten the listeners about your journey and how you got to where you are right now?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Well, first, thank you very much for having me.
No problem.
It's exciting to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
So my background, actually, I am a writer. I have spent probably the last 20 years of my career telling stories, right? Writing things. My career started working in advertising. So I spent 12 years working for North America's largest agriculturally focused communications agency, and was able to write everything from print and radio and TV and direct mail packages for clients all over North America. I worked in both sides of the border for this company as well, in the US and Canada. And then transitioned into a freelance career when I had my family, and was working locally here in Calgary with small and medium-sized businesses, being able to run the scope of, helping them develop and define their brand, and then all the way through to then being able to put the words on the page for them.
Right.
Which is, I think, some of the efficiencies is, that some of
Yep.
these, smaller companies really value.
For sure.
And then I'm currently in a really entrepreneurial phase of my journey. So I have a tech startup called Everyday Icing. And I've taken my love of words and storytelling, and I write one story a week that I put onto a subscription-based website, into this custom digital library that I've built. And then I get to tell all kinds of different stories.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, I think what's really interesting about your story, though, too, is the fact that you for a long time were writing on behalf of multiple brands at the same time.
Yes.
And I think I can only imagine how difficult that can be to keep a consistent voice, but separate on behalf of each individual brand.
Yeah.
And, as I just started developing the At Heart Clarity process. You and I had a conversation about some tools in order to make sure that a brand can communicate consistently, no matter who is communicating on behalf of that brand. If there's
Absolutely.
a social media person, communications person, that voice needs to be consistent because it's the brand's voice. So, you introduced me to one of the tools that we use, which is the voice filter.
Yes.
And I'd be really interested to hear kind of how you discovered that and how you implemented that tool in your everyday work when you're writing on behalf of multiple brands.
Well, back in the ad agency days,
It's like Mad Men.
It's like Mad Men. So back in my agency life, I could maybe touch anywhere from maybe up to 6 or 8 different clients a day.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I had a new assignment with a new client and a new brand, it was like you had to switch a different hat.
Right.
And you actually had to fully embody that brand,
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't want to be the one who couldn't do it right or have it sent back because it didn't sound or feel right.
Right.
As a professional writer, there was an expectation that you would deliver.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make that happen? So I was coached very early on in my career to ask a million questions and dive really deep into who is the client, what do they offer, where do they sell it, who do they engage with, and then go even deeper. How do they talk to their customers? What words and language do they use?
Right.
And starting to create some consistencies across their business operation that then you could apply into the writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the voice filter was a tool that we used at that time for almost all of our clients.
Right.
And it was as much about the business and how they do their business as how they see themselves. So even things like corporate values, your mission and your vision, those are all characteristics or elements of the personality of that brand.
For sure.
That needed to be captured. And so then usually the voice tool would be done collaboratively. So we as an agency or a creative team would take a stab at it and say, okay, here are the 7 items that we feel best fit your brand.
Right.
And the client would either weigh in, yay or nay, or offer some feedback. And then that was the touchstone.
Right.
That document became, I almost visually saw it like a pinball machine.
Right.
Right. So you take your sheet of paper and you write those attributes down and you hold up a piece of work, and it has to be able to ding and bang off of every single one of those words. And you need to be able to answer yes in order for it to be in alignment and appropriate for that brand.
Right.
So asking a lot of questions, being really collaborative, and then holding true to that document and those attributes was critically important for getting through those busy days.
Right. And I think kind of each section of the voice filter, I believe there's character, there's, voice, there's language with it, which I think is really important. Because I think a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, there's almost that curse of knowledge there, right?
Yes.
They know so much about their business. They know so much about their industry. And sometimes they're talking to their customers as if their customers know just as much as they do.
Yeah.
Right. But I think one thing that we've always kind of continued to put in that language box of the voice filter is simple language, right?
Yes.
And not too much industry jargon, because you don't want to confuse your customers,
Yeah.
right? What are some of the other pieces that you would often kind of build into that voice filter that you feel created more consistency and clarity for the client or yourself when you're writing on behalf of them?
Descriptions.
Yeah.
Taking it to that next level. So one of my favorite descriptors on a voice filter was for a rural retail client.
Okay.
And I worked with them for 6 or 8 years, and they were selling farm supplies, something as simple as horse crunch, all the way up to equipment. But their audience was very similar. And so one of the attributes on their voice filter, I will never forget, was colloquial, but not slang. And so we had to make sure that we're speaking in the vernacular of our customers,
right,
using the words that they use, using the language that they use, having that really friendly and familiar feel.
Right.
But there was a line. We're not going slangy. Like, we still have to be professional.
Right.
And so making sure that we took not just the attributes on that filter, but we gave them definitions,
right,
or taking it to that next level. For everyday icing, for example, one of the attributes on my voice filter is to inspire joy. And then the descriptor that I have underneath it is, does it make you smile from your heart?
Right.
Because I feel like there's so many ways that you could inspire joy, but I'm specifically looking for that emotional connection.
For sure.
So it's one thing to capture those characteristics, but another to make sure that they are being defined in a way that everybody understands, because that alignment is absolutely critical.
Well, yeah, because I think any definition of almost any word or adjective that you're using to describe a brand, it can be, interpreted in how many different ways, right?
Totally.
And I love that you kind of speak to how you want the customer to feel when you're speaking on behalf of the brand, because I think at the end of the day, that's the main goal as a communication, is you want to make the customer or the audience feel a certain way so that they take action in a certain way, right?
Absolutely. And also feel a certain way about that brand.
Right. Absolutely.
Because, another characteristic I remember is smart but not cocky. So you want to come across at that company, that brand wanted to come across as a leader, and that they know their stuff.
Right.
And that they are well versed in all the technical ins and outs.
Yeah.
But that little piece of smart but not cocky is a really critical piece. I come at it from putting the words on the page, and that's huge guidance for me to say, I can't come across as arrogant, right? When we start talking about the tone and the feeling of it, can't be arrogant. It can't be too, flippant. You got to be grounded in truth and in reality, right?
Right. And I think what's interesting is the implementation of that voice through somebody else too. Like how did you ever kind of go through a process where you were the original voice of that brand and then had to hand it off, or like what kind of was that process? Because I think, within social media and the marketing and the communications world, there's turnover like any other department, but how did you kind of navigate that progression and that handoff?
Yeah, well, I've been on both sides.
Right.
So I've been a creator and had to hand it off when I moved to the US.
Yeah.
And then also showing up in our US marketplace and picking up on other brands and then having to run with it. So having been on both sides, some of the challenges would be, is there going to be an actual physical handoff?
Right.
In the cases that there were, you could ask questions and you would be able to kind of get involved and really get a good feel and ask maybe the person who'd been doing the strategy or the client themselves, what does this mean? So that you can get that sort of intrinsic knowledge yourself. And handing it off, I would hope to maybe do exactly the same thing.
Right.
But some of the challenges clearly are interpretation, right? Making sure that you're interpreting it the way that it's intended and not putting personal bias on it.
Right.
Because coming in and out of projects, there's an element of ego. I can do it better.
For sure.
I don't like how that sounded. I don't feel that was right. But I think it's important to realize that sometimes your ego is not the story that needs to be told. And it's much more challenging to align with something that already exists and make it better than it is to reinvent.
For sure. And I think this is kind of a, for most of the listeners, small to medium-sized business owners, or even solopreneurs, we know many of them. But I'm interested what your kind of journey and approach has been from communicating on behalf of a larger brand or multiple larger brands, and then now as yourself as an entrepreneur, communicating on behalf of your own brand. What sort of tips would you give a solopreneur who's having to speak for themselves throughout all of their communications, whether it be social media or emails?
Yeah.
And making sure that the voice is also a part of the brand, even though it is themselves.
Yes. Okay. So you touched on something that I'm actually super passionate about. It's very, very easy to have a big client, with $1 million budget, say, this is the brand, and you've got 100 people touching it, and it's like everybody's aligned and you know what's going on. And it's a completely different game when you are that independent person who are like, I am the brand.
Right.
The brand is me.
Yeah.
The voice is my natural writing voice.
Yeah.
I know you and I have worked together on volunteer committees. Same thing. They have a brand, and it's like whoever's on that committee feels that they are the brand.
Yeah.
Right. And here's what I would offer. I would offer encouragement to take the time to do the work, meaning you may be the brand and you may feel the brand and know what the brand is, but write it down.
Right.
Get it on paper. Take the time to do the work.
For sure.
Like I said, Everyday Icing has a brand attribute filter. We have corporate values. I've taken the time to define the story that I want my brand to tell, because my goal down the road is to grow this brand and to know that I could hand it off, or I could, again, set those documents forward to somebody else and have them execute and it still be aligned. So whether that's your goal or not, when you get it on paper, you're also able to take a look at it and say, is this really correct?
Right.
Is this how I want to show up? Is this going to resonate with my customers? Is this
sure.
who I want to be when I grow up? And so don't assume that just because you're that voice in that brand that it's correct. Take the time to do the work to make sure that you know it's right.
For sure. And then also, as everybody does personally, everybody grows, every business grows. So how do you go about altering and changing and updating that voice as you go on?
Well, first, I think it comes from a belief that you can change it.
Right.
It's fluid. I mean, if there's one thing we know about ourselves as humans, we grow and change. And, brands, like people, grow and change. So be open to making those changes. Again, because I come at it from a writer's perspective. I am a huge fan of doing either biannually or annual creative reviews. Right. And actually sitting down and maybe looking at your social media analytics, looking at all of the work that you have produced or created, even, grabbing 10 or 15 emails that you've sent to clients, pulling it all together, getting it in one place, maybe grabbing a trusted coach or advisor or somebody that you trust to get in the room and say, hey, are we in alignment? Does this still feel right? Is this resonating with our customers? Do we need to change how we're sharing our information? Right. And maybe that's changing a few words on that voice filter. Maybe it's reviewing a color palette, right? It could be all kinds of things, but I think it's absolutely critical to make sure that you continue to update to resonate with your customers.
And I think you bring up an interesting point of having kind of a coach or advisor, right? I think you mentioned that you have multiple within the Everyday Icing space, which is amazing.
World,
Exactly. How important do you find that within the process, within communications and marketing for your process in your business, to have an unbiased view or an outside view? Especially as a solopreneur, because you're in the business and you are the business, right? So, you feel like you're portraying something, but having somebody externally, like how important is that to
It's critically important. So I think as entrepreneurs, we get to this seat around the table because we have that drive and that instinct, and we just know what we want to do. And you can get out of the gate with your blinders on and just go. Right. And I think that's a great skill to have. But at the same point, that unbiased, that outside opinion is a really important kind of check-in on, are you moving in the right way? Are you in a rut? that is going to limit your options, or are you on a highway that's got all kinds of exits that you can take and grow from? So I have a business coach, I have personal coach, I have brand coach, and then I have my husband, who I respect, and he's got this, he sees the world so differently than I do.
Right.
And depending on what it is that I'm working on, hey, like I sent a text message this morning to my coach, hey, I had this idea. What do you think? And, I'm not looking for a yes or a no particularly, but some kind of feedback on feels good. Not ready yet.
Right.
So critically important.
Awesome. And so kind of one of the last questions, I'm curious what your recommendation would be to, a small to medium sized business owner who's going, okay, we need to do an audit of our voice. We need to do a refresh, coming into the new year. What sort of process would you recommend that they go through to update their voice and make sure that it's consistent everywhere?
So here's what I would do. The first thing I would do is say your brand has a personality. And so think of your brand like a person. Maybe the first thing you do is you actually say, okay, this is how we want to show up, and write out what that looks like.
Right.
And then maybe take a look at all of your materials that you've produced to this point and say, what we are creating aligned with who we want to be?
For sure.
And identify those gaps. And then the third step would say, okay, if there are gaps, how do we close those gaps? Is it a different tone in how we talk to our customers? Is it a different story we need to tell? Is it a different way of showing up, which maybe even involves looking at the channels that you're using or the tools that you're using to engage with your customers? I think all of those go together.
Right.
Because the brand is a much bigger piece, and your voice is such an important way of communicating it. So take the time to just, like I said, that review. So important. Do it now so that when you start 2020, you'll be like ready to go.
Exactly. That's awesome. Perfect. Well, I know we're going to be back with the next episode for Story, which is awesome. But for listeners of this episode, where can they find you and Everyday Icing on social media and all that kind of fun stuff?
Yeah. Well, Everyday Icing is, like I said, everydayicing.com is a subscription-based website. I write one children's story a week that is either 5, 10, or 15 minutes to read out loud. So if you have a digital device, you will always be able to have a really great story. There are also no illustrations, because no adult is ever going to make a picture better than what a kid has in their own imagination.
I love it.
So you can, everydayicing.com, I have a 2-week free trial subscription, and you can follow along on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Everyday Icing Stories.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
We're going to be chatting with you in the next episode, chatting more about Story.
Absolutely.
And we'll I guess everybody else will hear us next episode on the At Heart Branding Podcast. Thanks, Shawna.
Thanks, Brighton.
I want to thank Shawna for taking the time to be on the At Heart Podcast. And if you want to follow along with her journey with Everyday Icing, it is very easy to do so. She's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Everyday Icing Stories. And also you can check her out on everydayicing.com. She's offering a 2-week free trial subscription to the library that she actually writes every story on there. It's amazing. And if you've got little kiddies at home and want to spend some time with them, be sure to check out the free subscription. You got 2 weeks. You can check out stories from 5, 15, and 20 minutes long and just connect with your kids. So give Shawna some support. Head over to everydayicing.com. Try out your free trial. And thank you again to Shawna for being a part of the podcast. Be sure to tune in with us next week, where I chat with Shawna a little bit more about Story. So, we just mentioned that she writes incredible stories, many, many, many of them, and has also done it for brands as well. So we're going to dig and pick her brain a little bit more about Story and how you can implement your brand voice into that story. So be sure to check out the next episode where we chat a little bit more about your brand story.